Welcome, Illumineers! It is time to take a rest from your quest and check on in to the Lore Keeper's Inn. I'm your host, Katie. Even though summer's over, it's time to get back on the tour bus and resume the Disney Animation Era's tour. As some people might have picked up on, I am a huge fan of Disney history and sharing facts about the legacy of Disney animation. So, this is the second installment of a series where we're going through the eras of Disney animation, talking about what films were featured in each era, a little bit of facts, and doing some little armchair illuminating and saying what's yet to come from those movies, and what we're hoping to see introduced into the great Illuminary. Now, on the last episode, we kicked it off with Rebecca and the Golden Era. But today, we are on our second leg of the tour, and we are covering the hits of the Silver Era. And with me is someone who I previously invited to talk about a much less thrilling movie of Little Mermaid 2. But despite that, she still agreed to come back and be on my show. She is one half of the iconic and charming duo of Laugh Lorcana. And you might have seen her more recently as an official caster for the Disney Lorcana Challenge in Toronto. She is the wickedly talented Becky.
Hi, Katie. Thanks for having me again. I always like to hang out with you. You're just fun.
Well, thank you. I'm so excited. And I thank you to your cat for coming too. This is truly exciting.
That's Abe.
I'm always Abe. I love it. My dog is not going to get on my shoulder. If she does, things have really gone off the rails if that happens. But so yes, thank you for joining. Now, Disney trivia connoisseurs, they might have already been upset because they might notice we skipped an entire era. Not we. I did. I skipped an era. There is an era between 1943 and 1949, which is dubbed the wartime era. The wartime era. Hard to say that, but it's a complicated era, and it's more heavy on the history than it is on the animation, and there really wasn't any Disney animated feature films released during the time. So I said, I'm just going to skip it.
That's
so,
the budget was not there, and it shows.
It's true. And the costume is just all of it. We're thinking about the Eras tour. You know how, on the real Eras tour, she only did one song from, Speak Now. This is that. There's only one song, and the song is, we're skipping it. So that's unfortunate. But we're back with the Silver Era, because at this point, the Silver Era is significant because, the War Era is not that interesting from a movie perspective because people were at war, and it is difficult to make a movie while fighting war. So, and it's difficult to market movies. If you guys watch the Golden episode, they were having issues getting people in the theaters because it's hard to relax and watch a movie when there is something called a world war going on. So, the Silver Era is the end of that war, and they call it the Restoration Era because not only did they have to bounce back from the war, just as a country, but also as a studio. So the era ran from 1950 and runs until 1967, and it includes 8 films. So we're going to have to go lightning fast through these, but we'll do it. All except one is featured in Lorcana. We have Cinderella, Alice in Wonderland, Peter Pan, Lady and the Tramp, Sleeping Beauty, 101 Dalmatians, Sword in the Stone, and lastly, Jungle Book. So, Becky, are there any movies in this era that are particular favorites of yours?
Most of these were big favorites of me as a child, particularly Jungle Book. When my sister and I were little, we used to take off all our clothes and run around in our underwear and pretend to be Mowgli. So
wonderful. What an inspiration that Mowgli provided to the children. But honestly, it's a fun movie. So
great music, a lot of fun.
I told this to Rebecca that I have a thing where I just assume any movie that came out before I was born came out somewhere between 1975 and 1985. I just was like, I don't know. That's when movies came out. So it is crazy to look at the dates on some of these because it's just my little brain couldn't handle as a child. It's like, oh no, before you were born, they're making Disney movies forever. That's just because your mom bought them at the same time does not mean they came out.
Which really says a lot about their staying power as films.
It does. It really does. Because some of these, some of them are more dated than others. I have beef with one of the movies in particular. Not beef. Either way. But the disclaimer is that last episode we had 5. This time we have 8. So it's like the Eras tour where it's just the hits. I can't cover everything. And maybe one day I'll do a deep dive on each one. But we're going to do the best songs, the best dances, and the best costumes from each of these eras. So we left off with, Disney had some what they called failures, one thing that like I'll kind of also caveat a lot of these things that I'll say like it was a failure, a bomb. Disney re-released all their movies. I mean, the whole bringing movies out of the vault to re-release on DVD and VHS is something they did in theaters for years and decades before that. So even if something I'm like, it was a failure, a lot of these have a redemption arc that, comes later. So if you go to Wikipedia, it's like, don't worry, people learn to like it, as evidenced by the fact that we're talking
True.
about it. Um, but they had some struggles with Pinocchio, Fantasia, and Bambi. So Disney had some pressure. He had to come back in with a movie that captured the magic of Snow White. And what better way to do the magic of Snow White with another princess? So he did Cinderella, started the production in 1948. And he had his eyes on this for a long time. So he originally was in Laugh-O-Gram Studios, which do you know what city he normally worked before he moved to Hollywood? He had Laugh-O-Gram Studios. This yeah, you didn't know it was a trivia show. What city was Laugh-O-Gram Studios in? Carolyn is somewhere in the atmosphere, and she just got like a little tingle.
Cleveland. Oh,
Kansas
so
City.
close.
I think basically. I mean, to most of America, sure. Kansas City and Cleveland, it's in the middle
Yeah.
somewhere. So even when he was working there, he had his eyes set on that classic fairy tale. But finally, he decided it was time to make this movie. And this movie was notable because it also launched the subdivision of the Walt Disney Music Company. So one thing you guys might not know is like Disney has all these little subdivisions. So like if you want to use a Disney song, you have to go to the Disney Music Company. They have the song, it's all sorts of licensing and things like that. So I'm sure people Ravensburger probably knows very well that there is no just one Disney person. You got to go to all these different departments. And so this is the founding of that, the Walt Disney Music Company, to market music separately and get those beautiful CDs that you'd beg your mom to buy after you saw the movie.
Okay.
So like the Tale of Cinderella, this film magically transformed Walt Disney Studios from a struggle to a success. Reviews were positive, and the film was the greatest success since Snow White and the fifth highest grossing film in North America in 1950. I looked at the other four, never heard of them, but it was the fifth highest grossing. I think one of them might have been like Ben-Hur. So I've heard of them. I just, either way, the magic is back. And the new era is off to an enchanting start. So, Becky, well, I would never call this my favorite Disney movie. There is a certain charm that like I can't deny where like I don't think there's ever a night where I'm like, I gotta watch Cinderella tonight. But like it's still like deep in there. It's sunk into my psyche. So what kind of relationship do you have with Cinderella?
So I think that movie is completely held up by its supporting cast. Like Cinderella is like whatever, the prince is kind of like whatever, but stepsisters iconic, our little mice pals iconic. There's the fairy godmother fantastic. Like so many things in there that really hold it up. But I mean, yeah, it's not my favorite, but I definitely appreciate what it is. And now, I mean, Cinderella is like the princess, getting her own
She
castle
is.
in Disney World.
So yeah, that movie, it's one where, yeah, the supporting characters really, I have a thing against villains. And it's not because I'm like, I don't like bad guys. It's just like, I have a hard time rooting for someone who's like, I hate this teenage girl so much. And like, she's just so mean to Cinderella. I think they write like fan fiction books. Like there's like a Disney villain series where like, don't worry, we'll give reasons why some of these villains were so unnecessarily cruel to teenagers. But this one was one that was hard for me to be like, yeah, that's reasonable. So tough villain in this one. Good card, I guess. But moving away from Cinderella, hot off the heels. So 1950 was Cinderella. 1951, we're in Alice in Wonderland. So similar to Cinderella, this was a story that had fascinated Walt since his time at Laugh-O-Gram Studios. However, this one stayed out of the box office because he kind of vacillated on what he wanted to do with it. At Laugh-O-Gram, he started to experiment with like live with animation, very similar to Mary Poppins in the Penguins scene. So he really liked that. And he also kind of kept going back and forth on what tone to do with it. It's interesting they cut out a lot of things and didn't. It's like the Jabberwocky's kind of in there, it kind of isn't. I wish I was in the meetings where they decided what to keep because at some point they said, hey, you know that scene with that walrus and he eats all those cute little babies? We're keeping that in. So I don't know what the nature of the cut scenes were, but that one made it. And yikes. Haunting. But another crazy fact is that the release of the 75-minute film was done as a double feature. And a lot of these were released as a double feature. And And the movie that they released it with was a true life adventure, so a documentary film titled Nature's Half Acre, which is probably the most boring movie title I've ever heard. So it wasn't super successful. I don't blame Nature's Half Acre. Perhaps people came for the Nature's Half Acre and stayed for the Alice. It's difficult to
Fair.
say, but it did result in a $1 million loss for the
Ooh.
studio. And unlike other films where they would release it, every couple years, this is one where they're like, no, we're not even going to release this again for a very long time. Long after Walt died, they didn't release it again until 1974. And then they're kind of like, it's a little psychedelic because the timing worked out where suddenly the, caterpillars and mushrooms and, the vibes were right at that time. So no comment on what that means, but the vibes matched in the 1970s with Alice. So I have mixed feelings on this film. I love the ride at Disneyland. Every time I go to Disneyland, that's my start the day. We got to go to Alice in Wonderland. It's perfect. It's wonderful. It's dark and light and fun. But I think it's because they got rid of all the parts that are spooky, like walruses eating babies. So what are your thoughts on this movie? Is it a movie that you're like, oh, kids love this film? Where are you
So
at?
I never really got the hype around this movie. Like, it's such a people who love Alice in Wonderland love Alice in Wonderland.
It's a
And
good point.
there are some really great moments, but the majority of it is, for me personally, it's just kind of what is this? I don't really get it. There's nothing particularly charming about a lot of it. I think the best part of the film is when she is singing in the field with Dinah, her little cat, and it's cats and rabbits. And there's that little song that she sings.
I don't even know this
so
song,
cute.
but
You
I'm
should look
glad.
it up. But it's
I
just
will.
not the kind of film for me. No.
I was hoping you were going to say the best part is the possibly inebriated little mouse that lives inside a
That's cute.
teapot.
That is fun.
Why is he there? I don't know. There's lots of elements to that movie where you're like,
Interesting.
I'll take some
Yeah.
notes to
And there's
ask later
a
what
lot of
this was about.
vignettes, your walruses. Maybe I blocked that out because I can't visualize that in my head right now.
Holy cow! So I can't express to you how cute these little.
I know what they look
oysters
like.
are.
I know what you're
Okay,
talking
you
about.
know
I don't remember him eating them.
Well, yeah, because the whole thing, and I might be parsing it because I saw it I was babysitting and I was watching it with this kid, and I'm like, what? I'm looking at the kid. I'm like, are you getting this? And he's like, oh, look at these cute oysters, and there's a walrus and some other marine type mammal, and he's he takes his eye away, and he's like, where are the babies? And he's like, I couldn't resist, and it's like,
okay.
what?
Okay, we don't see it.
Haunting. Haunting content, but what can you do? But it's iconic, and the ride, great, and the imagery. I mean, it all works out in the end because I think if you take out the movie part of it, everything else is great. So, but it didn't work in the box office. So, unfortunately. So, it was not all bad news for the Disney company because after Alice came the release of Peter Pan in 1953. So, this movie is actually based on a 1904 play, which some people might have become familiarized with from the movie in the early aughts called Finding Neverland, I believe. But it was a play by J.M. Barrie titled Peter Pan, the boy who wouldn't grow up. So in 1935, he set his sights on the play, and he didn't get around to buying it until 1938. And then they sidelined it, and it sat idle until 1949. A lot of the projects take this where Walt's like, I want to do it, and then they just kind of go, I don't know how to do it, though. And it just kind of sits there for a while. But eventually they picked it back up in 1949. And this was the first film where all 9 old men worked together. Now, and I said that to most people go, great, that seems mean, but that's a term they like. The 9 old men were animators. They're very famous.
Self-proclaimed.
You can find books on them. I don't know. They were 9 middle-aged men, 9 young men. I don't know. I don't know when I need to do an episode on when they went from being just 9 guys who worked together to 9 old men. But either way, that's their term now. And it was the first time that they worked together on a film. And they rose to the occasion by creating stunning animation based on live action references. They did this for a lot of movies, but this one they had a lot of flying. There's a song, You Can Fly. So they had to get that figured out. And my favorite fact I found out is that originally there was a party in Peter's hideout, and Tinkerbell got so mad and so humiliated that in her rage, she goes to Captain Hook and she rats him out, and she says, hey, Hook. She goes on her own free will and says, Hook, get him. And
Does
so
she say
Walt
that
and
though, or does she
well, she like
gesticulate?
shakes her. Yeah, she glitters in a
Okay.
way that
Mhm.
communicates. And so they didn't like that. They're like, Tinkerbell, she's a little bit of a brat. She is the original brat summer, as they say. They didn't. But either way, she's not that big of a brat. And
Well, I mean,
so
she
they
did
changed
try to
it
kill
to
Wendy, so
she did well, the mermaids did too. Like there's not a lot of girls in Neverland, unfortunately. So but she didn't turn on
Oh, okay.
Peter, and
Well,
that's what they saved her character a little bit. And Captain Hook instead kidnapped her, put her in a little lantern, and persuaded her to tell him. I don't remember how he persuaded her. Probably something evil. Um, and then the other thing is that the classic songs "You Can Fly" and "Second Star to the Right" were penned by lyricist Sammy Kahn, who also wrote a song that I wager many Americans know called "Let It
yeah,
Snow." So that's
that's
fun.
really fun.
Back then, people were just writing jingles. So I'm very excited because I love the Peter Pan
Right.
ride. You've been to Disney. I know. So Rebecca had never been to Disney World, and I'm still kind of like freaked out by that. And I don't know how I'm going to remedy that situation. But you've been to both
Yes.
Land and World, correct? And so, what are your thoughts on the Peter Pan ride?
So, have you been to both? Okay.
Yeah,
Um, so it's actually been a while since I've been to Disneyland, but I recall that being pretty similar.
yeah.
Not a whole lot of differences, but it is one of my favorite rides at Disney World. It's just very cool and chill and cozy, and it's nice and it's fun.
You
And
fly
you
and you're
fly.
in a little boat flying around. So this is where welcome to Katie's Humble Brag Corner, where in 3 weeks I get to ride the brand new 3D Peter Pan ride. And I watched a video of it because normally my rule is don't, but this one is one where it was it's a simulator ride, and I have a big bias against simulator rides. So I'm like, I'm gonna watch it. So I'm like I get through any negative emotions I have before I
That's
get
fair.
there. And I cried. So I was like, oh, it was just so magical.
Oh,
Little yeah, I don't speak Japanese, but I got the heart of it, and I think he was telling us, "Let's go." And oh, it was so cute. So I'm probably gonna cry in person, which is okay because I rode Beauty and the Beast in Japan, and I cried a little bit. And I turned around, and there's another person crying behind me. I'm like, "We're all going through
yeah.
it. These
Well,
rides,
I've
they'll
cried at
get you."
Disneyland/World before. It's part of it.
Yeah, it gets you. And I'm like, there are people who take videos and be like, "Oh, look at this person crying." I was like, first off, this is engineered for
It is.
emotions. Like, don't act
Yeah.
like something's happening. I'm at like the deli crying. I am at Disney and there's a lot of things
The
happening.
first
So,
time I went, like, around the holidays, and they do, like, an announcement over the speakers, and then it starts snowing in Main Street, and I was in a
oh,
shop, and I, like, ran outside, and I saw it was snowing, and I'm just, like, sobbing in the middle of Main Street because it was so magical.
it's just overwhelming. Yeah. Like they get you at all
Really
fronts. And then
do.
like you see a child being like, Mom, it's snow. You're like, "Bleh," and then you pass
Yeah.
out. So, yeah, if people aren't crying, just look at a little around a little bit more or go when it's snowing or ride the new Peter Pan ride. Simple tasks. You can do it. Um, so we're cruising along. It is now the time for the next film, and this is the one movie today that has not made it into Disney Lorcana. Now, every time I think about Sergeant Tibbs, I'm like, well, there's a chance Sergeant Tibbs is in this movie. He's not. He is firmly in 101 Dalmatians, despite the fact I think he belongs in every other movie.
Honestly, between 101 Dalmatians, Lady and the Champ, and the Aristocats, like, these side characters, I do blend them up quite a bit.
Yeah, it's a sassy
Oh,
middle-aged cat
Oliver and
character.
Company, that one too.
Yeah. So it's
Yeah.
not my fault. It is a little, but it's okay. So in 1955, they released Lady and the Tramp. Now it's funny how they came up with this movie. So it's based on an article in Cosmopolitan, which I assume Cosmopolitan is what we know and love as Cosmo, and it was called Happy Dan, the Cynical Dog. And so it was the first film filmed in CinemaScope, and I say it was based on the Cosmo story, but to kind of wind up, what happened is this artist that worked at Disney, Joe Grant, he wanted to make a movie for years about an English Springer Spaniel named Lady. Just a pretty dog doing pretty dog adventures. And Walt said, that sounds boring. And so Walt read this article about Happy Dan, the cynical dog, and said, what if pretty doggy and cynical doggy were together? So then they said, now that's a movie. Um, so I like that. I just like that somebody's like, I really want to make a movie about a pretty dog. And he's like, boo. So we could have had Lady, but instead we got Lady and the Tramp, not Lady and the Cynical Dog, but whatever. Overall, it wasn't a big success or failure, but it did inspire kids for generations to debate internally if adults actually romantically eat spaghetti and meat in the middle. That was something I was like, is that from this movie? Yeah. I did eat at Tony's Town Square, and people talk trash on it because they're like, it's like Olive Garden. Guess what?
Olive
I love
Garden's
Olive
great.
Garden. So, yeah. And they have a little
It's very
statue.
cute.
It's very cute. And another shocking fact is I've not
It's
seen this
crazy.
movie because it is so famous that I feel like I get it. I feel like between like I've seen the spaghetti scene, I've had the Disney sing along tapes, I watched, I've been in daycare rooms, so like I've caught enough of it where I just
That's how I feel about Lord of the Rings. Like I've just seen so much of it and the content and the memes, and I like get all the memes and I get all like the stuff. So I feel like
yeah
I've pretty much handled it.
yeah you're like, and I know it ends, it's fine, and I think I'm good, and so that's one I have not seen. But what
Oh
about
my
you? Is this a movie
gosh,
that did you did you
Katie!
and
I
Katie?
actually do really love this film. Um,
Okay.
my mom always wanted a Cocker Spaniel puppy, and so Lady was like very interesting to all of us, and we used to watch it. And there's like these bad Siamese cats, and I was like very prejudiced towards
Yes.
Siamese cats for a really long time. But
Well, I
it's
mean,
really
not
cute,
but
and all the little different dog characters are super cute. There is one upsetting scene though where a dog is euthanized
what?
at the shelter,
It
and
okay,
they like
that's
take him back to the kill room, and it's very disturbing.
I'm just making sure my
Oh, I'm
dog
so
can't hear. I'm
sorry.
like, I know she can't. She's
Do
not
you know
paying
the
attention,
music
but
from that film?
I only know they call it Bella Notte, which I'm not sure if that's from that movie or if that's
That
like an
is, yeah.
Italian restaurant song. Okay,
Well,
it's from
my
the
bop
movie.
is like, he's a tramp. And then there's like a bulldog in the background that goes like, boom, 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 lift.
Oh,
You
that's
should,
quite
you
fun.
should really look it up. It's a bop.
I'll watch it. I'm scared now because it's
I mean,
hard to go into a movie being like, there's
the
a
dog
website, does a dog
dies.
die? And this one's a
It's just
yes,
a dog. We don't
apparently.
know him personally. And
I know every dog.
in
I
my
feel like
heart,
once I see them.
but they just kind of like take him away. And everyone's like, oh, poor that guy.
That's
I know.
horrifying.
Anyway,
Well, all right.
really cute
So
though. I love it. Made the spaghetti.
yeah. Yeah. Your cat's like, well, we don't talk about that here. So now we know. So they've had some hits, they've had some not so good hits. So Disney, they know that princess movies sell. So given the success of Snow White and Cinderella, he began production of Sleeping Beauty. So this film took nearly a decade and $6 million to produce, which, like Dr. Evil, you might be like $6 million. That's like nothing these days. I don't know. Maybe that's not a lot to you, but today, though, in today dollars, that's nearly $63 million to make
Whoa,
for Sleeping
it's pretty
Beauty.
big.
Yeah. This made it the most expensive animated feature film at the time, and the budget was used to go all in on production and artistry of the film. So the thing that kind of sets this film apart is like it visually, and it's like a very like feels like kind of artsy. Like the music is fancy, the art is fancy. Um, Walt wanted to focus on making it seem like a moving illustration, which is kind of funny because I'm like, what is an animated
Mm.
film but a moving illustration? Either way, he wanted it to look like a moving illustration primarily from like the Middle Ages, some Renaissance paintings. And in addition, he wanted to use the music to be heavily influenced to the point that it's like almost sampled of Tchaikovsky's ballets, which also added to the romantic kind of air of it. It's a fancy movie. However, despite Sleeping Beauty owning her own castle in Orange County, California, which is a very successful thing in my book, when the film was released in 1959, it was considered a bomb. We really can't blame her, though, because she has the shortest screen time of any princess in any Disney movie at 17 minutes and 52 seconds, which I don't know if they count when she's sleeping. Debatable, but either way, she's barely in the film, even though it's named after her. Jasmine is in Aladdin more and is Aladdin's movie. So let's just put that in perspective. So we can't blame her, but in the end, the failure caused Walt Disney to kind of lose interest in animation for a while. The company posted an annual loss for the first time in a decade, and there were massive layoffs throughout the animation department. So does this surprise you to know that this iconic film, because I mean, obviously Sleeping Beauty, I mean, no one's like, that stinker. Like it obviously had a makeover. So was it surprising to hear that it was a really bad time for Disney?
Not particularly. I'm not like criticizing the 1959 average American who's going to go watch this film, but I feel like maybe some of this medieval artistic renditions were maybe lost on the classic amount of the population. It is a beautiful film. There's some really cool scenes, you know, the maleficence of it all. In general, though, I do think this movie's kind of like, there, I said it.
Yeah, and it's fair. I mean, she I think, like, the things around it, like, they made movies. They're like, "You know, let's make cool movies," and they made, like, Maleficent movies later because 'cause they're like, "There's some cool stuff going on, and then we didn't really do
I
that
just
in the
recall
movie,
being a lot
unfortunately."
of fairy shenanigans and just being like, they're just making everything worse. These people, no, it's not it.
Not it. So you're like, "I'm with it." The Disney r I'd be in the audience going, "Didn't like it." And that's okay. Um, Now I have been saving all my thoughts about the future of these movies and Disney Lorcana to the end. Like, that's like the fun
Yeah,
little
yeah.
treat at the end of all this knowledge. But I no
Oh,
longer
jeez.
can do that because I want to stress that there's one song in the next movie that has not been in Disney Lorcana, despite the fact that there was an entire set with 40,000 puppies. And by 40,000, I mean there's like 8 puppies. But either way, there was a time
Wow.
where I was like, wow, we're going all in on 101 Dalmatians. And the song I'm talking about is Canine Crunchies, which I will not do the voice. I'll do the voice a little bit, but it's the Canine Crunchies can't be beat. We make them meow especially. Doctor, how can pictures canine crunchies? Yeah, so that's what it sounds like. It's art, and it would have been so great for healing. Imagine play or sing Canine Crunchies heal all your puppies, and
That
I don't
still
know
could
what
be a
was going
thing, I
on.
believe.
Yeah, the return of the puppies. It's Ursula's returns, and then tidal wave
Yeah.
of puppies, 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 puppies. Either way, so Canine Crunchy fans already know we're discussing that 1961 film 101 Dalmatian. It's surprising to learn that this film was based on a book, a novel, a children's novel. I did not know that. And it was released in 1956. So this is one, unlike the other ones where he buys the rights and then he sits on it for several decades. He pretty much, the novel came out while it's like, I love dogs. I mean, as evidenced by the Grumpy Dog movie. I can't remember. I already forgot. Tom the Cynical Mutt or
Yeah.
something. He the happy cynical dog. Either way, he read 101 Dalmatians and said, "Yes, we are doing that." So it came out in 1956. They're already starting production. The movie largely follows the plot of the book, but I did find a very special sentence in my research that says, it's in quotes, they condensed some of its characters, which included Cruella's husband and cat.
I would have loved to have seen that.
What does that mean? Like, I haven't seen this movie in a very long time. Possibly, maybe never. It's debatable. What do you mean by they condensed? Do they mean they got rid of the husband and the cat? Is there a character that stands in for both a romantic male partner and a cat?
Cannot think of any, but I would love to see
So,
that, though, existing.
a mystif- a mystifying sentence of combining the husband and the cat for the sake of time. But apparently, I'll need to do some more research on that. Um, and the happy news is it was a box office success. People love dogs. It was the first animated feature to earn more than $10 million on its initial release. It pulled the studio out of the Sleeping Beauty financial slump. But by then, Walt was still kind of like over it, and he was still kind of over animated films in general because he was in the midst of doing
Mm.
Disneyland, and he was really into Disneyland. Good for him though, because how fun
Yeah.
is that? Like, if I could build my own theme park or work on a movie where people are going to be like, "Oh, I didn't like how artsy it was." I'd be like, "I'm going to make a train," and make a train he
You
did.
don't deserve what I could do.
Yeah. So, and then this is another movie where
Mm.
not the villain. I don't think we talk much about how evil Cruella is. Her motive is a coat. She euthanizes dogs for fashion, and I don't understand how we don't, as a society, talk about this more. About how Cruella is like a really like off, go to jail
Yeah,
villain.
she totally sucks. I find it very weird how hyper focused she is on these particular puppies. It's just like, I need these specific litter of puppies.
Everything about her is
Yeah,
off
well,
putting.
that's
It's a
true. Yeah,
very
and it's just like a lot. I do love her voice though, and I think she's great. I am a kind of fan of this film. I like the human characters a lot more than the animal characters. like Anita Darling and Roger, and they're
Yeah.
cute.
And the Cruella de Vil song, you love it. And like they're the couple, I mean, they're the very impressional meet cute that I remember seeing them as a
So
kid and be like, that's
cute.
the relationship I
Yes, with all
want.
the
Like
people that
that
look
was
like
the
their
level.
dogs. Do you look like your dogs, Katie?
God, I hope not. Maybe. I mean, we both look confused and kind of, I don't know. I hope not. She's a French bulldog, so like, yikes, if that's the case.
Yeah,
But
that's her.
we are similar though. My other dog Zelda, so Olive is somewhere in the corner thinking about life. But my other dog Zelda, we are personality the same though. We're both little divas. We're both kind of like upset at times that aren't
That's
appropriate.
fair.
We're
I like that.
so, but yeah, that movie, the villain, very upsetting. But she does have a lot of style. I think the fact that like she is an icon on her own, we like forget that she ultimately wants to kill enough dogs to make a garment. But I digress.
Quick cue. Did you see the Cruella live action with Emma Stone?
I did. It made not a lot of sense, but I still enjoyed it. It was very
Legit.
confusing
I
for
feel
me.
that.
Yeah, because it was just fun. It was like I have like a rating scale of movies where there's good movies. Like it's a good movie and I enjoyed it. There's like good movies, but like I didn't really enjoy it that much. I can tell they were doing something, but it wasn't for me. And then there's movies that's like it's not a good movie, but I had fun. And that's definitely a movie where it's not really like a good movie, but I was like, I'm having fun. What is she gonna make? That just caught on fire. How fun is that? I bet you liked it because you're a little so enthusiast.
Yeah.
Have you ever made a garment that you light on fire in front of your
No, I
friends and
haven't.
enemies?
I'm actually currently making number blocks costumes for my kids for Halloween.
That's very fun.
So
Okay. Flammable?
serious
You
business.
have
No,
okay.
they're made out of felt.
Okay.
So
All right.
no flames around toddlers. Thank you.
Well, hers were it was more for the show. No one was ever in danger in that garment. But
That's true. That's a good point.
we'll circle back to the number blocks. But
We don't have
yeah, because I have questions, but for the sake of time. The next film to be released is Bittersweet because it is the last animated film to be released during Walt's lifetime. So the film was released in 1963, and it actually started production in 1939 when Disney. So this is another one where like Disney acquired the rights to the source material novel, and we are of course talking about Sword in the Stone. Um, so this film, I will say, is the first film that featured the Sherman Brothers, which I have a very big love of the Sherman Brothers. Saving Mr. Banks, I love the portrayal of the Sherman Brothers in that movie.
Me
So
too.
so good, and they've written just wonderful little songs in the theme parks. I was gonna go to a panel in D23 with children, but then I didn't because I got tired, and it makes me feel like bad now, being like, "Well, I was tired, so I didn't."
I
Go.
could have pushed through.
No, but
But
anybody
no.
that's been to a convention or a challenge knows that there's times where you're like, I will perish.
It's over. Yeah.
But either way, the Sherman Brothers are amazing, and they went on to have a very successful and productive career with the Disney company. If you do want to hear more about this film, I highly recommend an episode of a now retired podcast, Hakuna Lorcana. We did a deep dive all about it, so you can learn just all about the movie. But the really the end part is that it was not a failure. It was kind of like it just happened. There wasn't notable in either direction on a success or failure, but the reviews were mixed, and I would agree because if we talk about a movie where we're like, hey, we have the beginning, middle, of end, it's not like that. It's a very non-traditional movie, and I didn't see it until now. I saw it this year, so that changed it a little bit. But I will say that the other elements of the film, like kind of like with Cinderella, the characters, the setting, the goofiness, like it carries it so hard that like something happens at the end of the movie and you forget that you're like, was there a whole scene about squirrels wanting and be in love? And you're like, no, I don't remember that.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, is this a film you watched as a kid? Because I feel like that helps. If you watched it young, then it helps your view of how this movie operates in the zeitgeist.
I knew I saw it as a kid, but it wasn't something that I particularly liked. And even still, I'm kind of like, it's just a lot.
It's a lot to unpack. And I mean, the characters are fun, but Madame Mim doesn't appear. And I think I like noted it until 5 minutes into the film. And it's like a 110-minute film. Like she shows up the film to battle, and then they're like, anyway, he's king. Bye. He's king. See you later. So it's a lot. Also, and this is just me rehashing beef I have with this movie. At one point, Arthur says, I can't read. And they're like, oh, that's not good. We should teach you to read. And like the owl's like, I'll do a few letters. And then like Merlin's like, this is so boring. Let's go fly. And like that stuck out to me that like they're like, we got to teach this kid to read. And they're like, no, it's boring. Why? Which
Fair.
fair. I mean, if I was a teacher, I'd be like, if I could turn my students into a bird and peace out, I'd probably do that. So
I do, just while we're going through this is kind of on aha. I kind of got to myself. It's like, I do like the animal movies. My favorites are like, I guess because I'm a 90s gal, but the movies that all have like a boy, a girl, and an animal, like your Aladdin and your
yeah.
your Hercules. And, I feel like Cinderella's a bit in that realm and stuff. And this one just doesn't fit into either of those categories. I
don't even know what this movie is. It's weird because it's about a guy who becomes king of England and pulls a sword from a stone, thus the title. But that is such a small part of this movie.
It really
He quite literally does it basically off screen. We see it, but he does it and he's like, oh yeah, I did this. And I was like, that's crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, it's like unrelated plot, goofy animation, like just doing animated fun stuff. I have no patience for it.
Yeah.
No, I'm not interested.
So I won't talk bad about it because I don't
me neither.
want the ire of Madam Mim fans out there.
Because there's a ton of them.
There are. They're like total Mim heads is what they call it. Yeah. Mims. So yeah. Yeah, and we'll touch back. Lorcana redeemed that movie in ways that I think they deserve an award for, because if I didn't watch that movie, I'd be like, wow, this is really cool. Either way. So we're at the end of the Silver Era, and we are here with the movie beloved by Katie and Becky's everywhere. It is The Jungle Book, which released in 1967. So this is going to be a lot of up and downs because it's like a happy movie, but it's like, and Walt's dying. So it's like, it's hard to separate these two things. But the movie was released in 1967, but Walt passed in 1966. So this was the last movie that he was a producer on. So that's why it's the end of the era. It's basically, this is kind of the last change of the tune of Disney Studios. And it's based on a book that part's not shocking, but the book was written in 1864, which I was like, wow. Oh God, I hope that's not too loud. I could edit it.
No, it wasn't.
Yeah, but wow, 1864. And then people really liked it by Rudyard, amazing name, Rudyard Kipling. I really hope that's right, because it just doesn't seem like a name. But
that is correct.
So it took years to nail down the tone of this movie, because originally they were going to make it super dark and naturalistic. So similar to Bambi, where it's just like nature, then just it's bad out there. But I think it was, the one that was produced by, I don't think it was Jon Favreau. I know Jon Favreau did Lion King. I don't think he did Jungle Book, but did he do Jungle Book? People can yell it. Just if you're in your car, yell it, and then we'll hear it. But thank you. So
are we talking about the most recent one?
Yes, the live action one
with Christopher
walking as an orangutan. This were both.
That was so weird. I didn't get that.
It was a weird vibe movie. It was a strange vibes, but I think that vibe, like the kind of more dark, like it was kind of the vibe they were originally going to go for. However,
I see that
Disney came into the room. He's like, "Hey, I have a day off from building trains," and he like looked at the storyboard. He's like, "Yikes!" And he said, "This is too dark. It's too depressing, and I don't like it. We need to make it appeal to families." So there was a conflict. The man working on it, the storyboard artist, last name is Pete. He's like, "I gotta go. I'm not gonna work anymore. I want to make a dark movie, and you're not letting me, and I gotta go." So the new writer took over, and Walt Disney handed him a copy of the book and said, "The first thing I want you to do is not read it." And I had it, which was great. I wish more of my assignments for my boss was like, first thing, don't do it. But he said, let's establish the characters. Let's have fun with it. So have fun they did. And so they made it a fun movie, and they injected levity. The Sherman brothers were called in. Now, they did not write Bare Necessities, which I was very surprised to learn. That was not their song. But they did write, the I Want to Be Like You. Yeah, so they made it jazzy. King Louie is supposed to be pretty menacing, and he is very menacing in the live action one. He's very large, and I don't know why, and I really wish they explained.
He's so big.
He was very big, and they were like, no, we're going to make him just a jazzy guy.
Very.
And I think that's what they did with a lot of things.
And you totally get it. Like, he's just trying to do his own thing. He's just, trying to progress his own little nonsense. And I think that's fair.
Yeah. So they injected some fun and whimsy into the film. And as a result, when the film released in 1967, it initially became Disney's second highest grossing animated film for the United States and Canada, and the ninth highest grossing film in 1967. It was released 10 months after Walt Disney's death, and the reviews of the films were largely positive, but a lot of them noted their fondness and respect for the man that started it and the mark that he left on the world of animation. So a lot of the reviews were kind of saying, like, you know what, this movie, that is Disney. It is fun. It is what we know and love. And so, yeah, that definitely kind of seeped into the reviews and added that kind of a note of sadness because I can't, it's hard to comprehend the weight of that news story because I mean he was doing Disneyland, Disney World was on the horizon. He was on a show like every Friday. So like I imagine that was a tough time. Did you know this was the last movie he worked on? I guess because I never really know the timeline until I do these episodes. So were you aware that this was?
No, not at all. I was not aware of that.
Yeah,
I know he's like been gone a while, but sometimes it feels like it's been like not that long, if that makes
exactly. Because yeah, I mean
he lives in the parks and stuff, and so it's like
it's very
yeah,
interesting. And it's very, so when I went to D23, they had the Disney Family Museum, which is in the Presidio in San Francisco. And I listened to a podcast once where he was talking about like going to the museum. And they said there's a room and you like walk in and it says like Walt dies. And there's a picture of the world crying and Mickey Mouse is like crying next to the world. And then there's all these like news stories of how it hit people. And I'm like, I don't ever want to go in that room. And so I told them, I was like, I don't want to go in that room. It sounds too sad. And they're like, it is really sad. So I got confirmation from the Walt Disney Family Museum that the room that sounds sad is exactly as sad as it sounds.
it makes sense.
But one more happy thing is that, you know, the Jungle Book obviously was fun. So I'm glad that he got to see produce. I'm glad that like his last thing was saying, let's make this a little fun. And, you know, because Bambi, no offense to that movie, real bummer. It's a real bummer of a film. So I'm glad that he was around to say, we don't need to do that again. We need dancing apes.
And there's like a lot of poignancy to it as well, like at the end where he has to go off and live with humans. And it's a beautiful film.
Yeah.
10 of 10.
So with the passing of Walt and the release of Jungle Book, the Silver Era, it came to an end. And as a hint for what to come, the next era is called the Bronze Era, but it's also been called the Dark Age. So it's going to help kind of point to the challenges that happened after they lost Walt as like this very guiding light in the company, as like the North Star for everything they did. I don't want to end on a sad note, but he passed at the age of 65, which is pretty young in the scheme of things, especially with the momentum he had at the time. But the impression he left behind and the momentum of creativity, it's like hard to understate how massive it is, given that we are currently on a podcast talking about a game that spun off from the properties, spun off from his creativity. So like it's, you know, we all want a legacy and he definitely did that. So I won't claim to know how the afterlife works, but I do hope that he can see that through all the risks and all the challenges, all the bad times, and all the work that his team did, he did leave a legacy that created joys in ways that I can't imagine that he could imagine how things progressed. I don't know if he could have seen D23 coming.
Probably not.
No, like
he would have loved it though.
He would have. He'd been like, you guys are nuts. And I love it. And then be like, where's the trains? That's a common thing. He really liked trains. So yeah, I'm excited for the next episode because there's some movies I have not seen because yeah, I think like Rescuers and like Oliver and
so good.
And they're movies that people really like. So I'm quite excited to dip my toes into the darkest times in Disney history. Yeah. So speaking of the legacy left behind by Walt, the Silver Age is very well represented in Lorcana, or at least fairly well. When we did the Golden Age, there were just some movies that are like, nope, not in there. But in As of Shimmering Skies, we have the following count, which could be off by a card or two. So Cinderella has 19 cards, Alice in Wonderland, 21 cards, Peter Pan, 41 cards, Lady and the Tramp, goose eggs, not allowed for whatever reason. Sleeping Beauty, 33, 101 Dalmatians at 17 if you don't count the variations of the puppy cards. Sword in the Stone is at 33, and the Jungle Book was the most surprising to me at 5. I don't know why I thought there's more than 5 cards. There's quite only 5 cards.
Well, it doesn't even have like Bagheera or Mowgli.
And I wonder, it must be due to copyright because I mean, the common theme is this: is they had to negotiate with people and their estates to be like, let me do this. So maybe they're like,
That's true.
no. But Baloo and King Louis in there, I don't know. It's very
Yeah.
complicated, and I would, as we mentioned earlier, getting rights to things is complicated.
Hmm.
And a thing to note with Azurite Seed coming out in November, Peter Pan is the numbers are going up. It's at 41. The stock, bye bye bye. We're gonna
Peter Pan stock is up.
it is. I'm so thoroughly excited. There's a Peter Pan Tinkerbell card, and I didn't even read it. I just saw the art and said, "Yeah, I love it,"
And
and
you're
like
like, oh, that's cute. I'm
stamped
here
it.
for that. Yeah, the new one looks cute. Fairy bonus. We love to see it. Yeah, it's a lot. I don't think I noticed how many Peter Pans there were, but there are a lot of Peter Pan cards.
There is Captain Hook. Like even in set one, I'm like, why are there so
Yeah,
many Captain Hooks? What's going on there? And
a lot.
Jafar
Yeah,
and Captain
they have
Hook,
them on.
like there's a few villains that you can tell people are like, I love it. Please, can we make another one? And they're like, okay, can make another
My
Jafar.
my controversial take is I feel like we're good on Sword and Stone for
Yeah,
like a while.
yeah, we are.
They're like fantastic cards, or like some of the best cards in the entire game for sure. But I just feel like we're good. Like I'd be okay with no more.
I think
That'd
we're
be
still like I think they're gonna be cheeky and one day do the protozoa or the zy or the
oh yeah.
amoeba. I think that that's like gonna be
Yeah,
like
yeah.
their final like and this, but
That would be cute.
because
Yeah.
that one is
I like
funny.
that.
It's that's funny, but
But also I'm surprised with Alice in Wonderland, like there's only one Mad Hatter, and I feel like that character has a lot of potential to do a lot.
yeah, there's a lot in the Tea Party in general that, on birthday. But before we get to the ones that we want to see, are there any that you're
Absolutely.
like, they nailed it? These are great. I love these cards that are from the this era of film.
Um, I really like what they're doing with Cinderella. I'm sorry, my cat is
No, she
excited.
has or he has a right to speak up, you know.
Cat. Love how they're kind of made that interwoven story with Cinderella and Prince Charming. It gives them like a lot more life and interest. Of course, the 101 Dalmatians puppy meme is
It's funny.
fabulous.
Yeah, I never built
Very
the puppy
on
deck because I made the mistake of like giving puppy cards to children that wanted puppy cards. Now I have no puppy cards. And I'm like, why did I help the kids? Why?
foolish,
I
foolish.
know. So puppy's hard to do. But I will say, yes, Cinderella. I love the one cost that sings for 3 because how fun is it on turn 2 to just do mischief? And it's just
Yeah,
Cinderella. It's so
very fun.
fun to use Cinderella to sing World's Greatest Criminal Mind and take out Chernabog. Like what a time to be alive when you're able to pull that off.
Honestly,
And Cinderella Stout-Hearted, amazing, iconic. The fact that when she sings, she's like, I'll fight anyone. Like the minute a song
I
happens,
love that card.
she's like,
Mm.
headstrong, I'll take you on. And she'll take on anyone. That's
Mm,
what I imagine. That's her power.
I love it.
And I will say, I have no attachment to Maleficent as a character. Like, I don't think I'm a Maleficent fan of Angelina Jolie or the animated one or the child one. But her cards are good. Like, she's got a lot of
Yeah,
hits. Dragon feels good. It's been, we're on set 5. And if I can find a way to work in a card where it's like, hey, guess what? I banish what I want. It's up to
see
me.
ya.
There's no
Yeah.
rules. It's whatever I want. And that's quite funny. Unless it has word and then there's a rule, but whatever. And I will also give I will give a big shout out to one of my favorite cards in Lorcana, I think forever, and I don't think I'll ever change my mind, is Tinkerbell Giant Fairy. It is, I think, everything Lorcana should be. It is whimsical. It is fun. It is good. It is relevant. You can't have a better card than Tinkerbell Giant Fairy.
Yeah. It's storytelling. It's art. It's perfect.
It's
10
everything.
of 10.
It's and then the
They
playmat.
really are.
It's just, I mean, oi, oi. That's what I'll say. Oi,
Boy.
it's great. So knowing that some of these films though have little to no cards compared to some of the later franchises, what are some ones that you're like, come on, get it in there. We gotta get this out.
Of course, anything Lady and the Tramp would be cute. It's again like your 101 Dalmatians and like I said, the Aristocats, lots of fun supporting characters that people would recognize. Not to like say anything shady about the random sugar rush racers
They
that
keep coming.
could not pick out of a lineup.
I know, and there's
That's
more.
pretty
Like, and I was like, "Oh, we're done with
that's
that," and then like they're doing a reveal. They're like, "There's more," and I'm like, "I think we're good,
great.
but thank you."
Never gonna keep any of those
There's like
apart.
500. They're like, "Guess what?
Yeah.
Actually, you didn't know." But
And also I would love to see like Anita and Roger in any sort of supporting role with 101 Dalmatians. Oh, the Twilight Bark,
I don't know what that
where
is, but it sounds wonderful.
when they're looking for the puppies, they get the Twilight Bark. So all the dogs in the area, they're all barking to each other, and like
Oh,
they have a system of messages trying to find.
that is amazing because okay, I say that like so sometimes I'll have the windows open and I'll hear a bark and then it just
Yes.
slowly cascades through the neighborhood.
Yes,
So,
I always every time I hear that in my neighborhood too, I'm like, "It's the
well,
Twilight
now I know
Bark.
there's a term for it,
They're
and
talking to each other."
yeah, and imagine how cool it'd be to have what's the man, the piano man,
Roger.
Roja. If they had like he does songs, like he'd be a perfect Amber.
Oh, because he's like a composer. He
Yeah.
could
Or you could like fetch
that'd be
go
cute.
through your deck for a song, like name a song and
I
you can go
love
get it
that.
because he's a
I love
songwriter.
that.
Oh, and I think I messaged you. It's like something with spaghetti because I just think that's great. You could, I don't know how it would work, but that's not my job. My job is to just say I want it. And then I, yeah, Alice in Wonderland. I think we're good with the Queen. We're all stocked up on the Queen, but yeah, the tea party. I'm ready for Little Mouse in a teapot, hanging out in a
Very
teapot. I'm ready for a rabbit friend. I'm ready for a birthday cake. I'm ready for on birthday. Just give me all of that. Now
Yeah, I'm surprised we haven't had that yet. An on birthday
there's a
sort of action or something.
there's a teapot one they revealed, right? I think during the thing. I don't know the last Lorecast. I think they revealed there's some sort of tea related card, and I said that's
Mhm.
nice, but more. I'm hungry.
Yeah,
Um,
so
and I think those are the big ones. I mean, but we're leaving the biggest one is Jungle Book. We need many more.
everybody.
Get them in there. I need Mowgli. I need they could be. I want to be like you, and you copy
Oh, that would be
abilities.
so cute. Yes, and then, like, there's the military, elephants. They have a really cute song, and there's a tiny baby elephant.
I do like that little.
Military style. And that's another song I'll send you. You really got it.
I know. I got a lot to do after this. Um,
It's like the music. I always know the music from when I was a
I
kid.
remember being kind of upset when I saw Tarzan. I was like, "Is this like a B version of the elephants in Jungle Book?" Because I like those elephants a little bit more than the ones in Tarzan.
100%. I would agree with you on
Like
that.
these.
Oh, that's such a good.
I know. So yeah, Jungle Book. We gotta up those numbers. To your point, Sword in the Stone. There's more cards we can do. I think Arthur deserves a card that people will play because he has gotten a few
Oh,
cards that people.
I play that one where you get the bonus when you bounce. It's
Mm,
so fun.
which one is that
That's so
one?
much
I apparently maybe it's a personal bias that I'm just like all Arthur cards
fun.
deleted.
You're crazy.
But I
Wizard's Apprentice.
okay. Oh my gosh, you're right. That card was so
In
good.
his character quests, you may return. You
Okay.
may bounce to gain 2. He's the baby boy. We
Someone
love
once
him.
said they're like set 2 wasn't even that good. And I said, "How dare you?" Because set 2 had the turn 2 Arthur turn 3 Arthur, turn 4 goat bounce, 5 lore in one turn or your opponent doesn't believe you.
Beautiful.
I still am
It's
chasing
beautiful.
that. I've never
It's
gotten that
beautiful.
fun back. So yeah, you're right. Arthur got a good card and then life happened.
Then we're good. That's it.
I need a card that says you can't hurt Arthur. Whatever that
He gets 2 enchanted though. That's not fair.
it is. But they're both I have both of them. That's the other thing that's bananas is I don't like that movie, but I have both of those enchantments because I'm like, you're just get in here, cutie.
They're only $67 right now. I should just buy one.
You should because it's a very beautiful card.
That's one of my favorite arts is that the one from set 2.
Yep. It's just so I'm sorry. This is my public apology as a podcast. I've never had to do a public apology, but this is my apology to Arthur, the King Arthur. I'm sorry that I said all your cards are
You
bad.
better show your respect when you
'cause
address him.
he does cool things. We don't see it in the movie because the movie ends and then he becomes king. The movie ends, by the way, with Merlin comes back from the future, and then they make a weird joke about movies, and then the movie ends. How crazy is that? Like what an unhinged way to end a tale of olden times. So being like, what about like anachronist reference, and then cut the film, and then they didn't even have credits back then because they're like, we already did that up front, so just let's get out of
Maybe
here.
that was the first time anybody ever did that, though.
Yeah,
Did you think of that?
they're like, people are gonna
You invented that.
you won't like it, but your kids are gonna love it. Is how
Yeah.
oh, yeah. So yeah. So I think there is the silver era, I would say this is a good era. Like the golden era was a lot of, I think it was called golden just because they're like, it's new. And like, I don't think the movies, but like this one, it's good. I would rate them. They did a good job. Good job, everyone. To those, to the 9 men and the other men and the women, I'm sure there were some.
They were allowed to ink.
They were. And Mary Blair did help a little bit with some. She helped with Sleeping Beauty because that was the artsy fartsy movie. And they said, Mary, get in here. We got to get some hard to digest vibes for the public. And she said, I'm ready.
We don't get it. Where's the tree square?
I know, right? And I feel bad that Walt would be like, I have this idea and it's going to be so good. And they're like, I don't get it, Walt. And he's like, whatever. And so that's one thing, like, if he can see into like the crystal ball of like what's going on right now, I hope he's like, people get it now. They didn't then.
Yeah.
I was actually.
I think that's honestly, there's something special in that as well that, later you can really appreciate it. I feel like there's all kinds of content like that.
Yeah.
Movies.
Yeah.
Books.
Yeah, where you're like, or the other way, where like at the time you're like, this is so good, and then now I'm like, maybe Shrek wasn't that good. So things happen both ways. I won't talk.
Katie, shut your mouth.
I won't trash talk Shrek. Shrek was iconic and changed the trajectory of animation for the coming 20 years. So
the most since Walt Disney himself.
Yeah, you're like Shrek himself. I don't think Shrek made the movie. Who made Shrek? If you could tell me that, then I will eat my hat.
DreamWorks.
Okay, well, that's
I don't know.
Mr. Shrek, the Shrek family.
It was all Michael Myers.
Yes.
It was just him.
Well, that concludes our journey through the Silver Age. So a giant thank you to Becky. You were a last minute guest. So I thank you for being a guest. Thank you for being a last minute guest.
I always love to be the last choice.
You were my first last choice, if that makes sense.
Oh, thanks, girl.
Yeah. So, because I was like, who's someone that can come through and just will talk about Disney without feeling stressed? And
who has nothing going on?
No,
Tuesday, nothing.
I see you. You've been being bothered by a cat for an hour, and you've done very well with it.
Loves it.
So thank you. I loved getting to see you cast in Toronto. That was so exciting. It felt like the most ambitious crossover all time when it was the Becky Rebecca double cast. I was like, it's happening. It's on Twitch. It was very exciting. So I also so excited. It was like 2:00 in the morning and I got a notification being like, Laugh Lorcana's new episode. And I was like, And so I made a tweet. I was like, guys, it's happening. I know what I was awake, but I was awake and I'm very excited. So always very excited when you grace my Twitch or Twitter or podcast feed. And yeah, you and Katie are 2 creators who inspired me to do what I do. So always working with you. Absolute joy. So before I say goodbye, where can people find you? I mean, as I mentioned, you never know where Becky's gonna pop up, but if people were wanting to keep an eye on where you might pop up, where should they look?
I always would direct people to check out Laugh Lorcana. It is our podcast on all your podcast platforms. We can also be followed on Instagram and Twitter, and that's about it.
And listen to some podcast people are like, oh, it's like a news podcast or something. No, like it's an eternal format where I think it's worth going back. So if you got into Live Up and later, go to the back catalog, baby, because I love it. And it's fun too.
We have some good discussions on there. We've talked about some things that I think are important.
It's true. And things that are hard to talk about because things that I don't talk about because I'm afraid people will try to debate me and I don't want to and I'm scared. And you guys are very brave and well-spoken and make things in a way where people are like, oh, that makes sense. And so I appreciate your voice in the community. So thank you again for joining. And thank you to my listeners for joining for another episode. As you know, there is always room for more at the end. So if there's anything you want to hear me talk about, please feel free to email me at contact@thelorekeepersin.com, which if you do, you will be the first person. The only person that emails me on that email is a sticker company. So you could be the first one. But you can also reach me on Twitter and Instagram via the socials linked in the description. And make sure to like and subscribe and all those things because it matters and it makes me feel so good. If one person gives me a 5-star review, it's the highlight of my day. So as always, thank you for hanging out with me today. I am always happy to have you stop by the inn, no matter where your quest may take you. And remember, if you don't know where to find us, just take the second start of the right exit and head straight on till morning.